You're listening to Physician Non-Clinical Careers, episode number 342. Light your entrepreneurial fire and create your ideal life. Today's guest was in the middle of building her dental practice when she was forced to sell the business for reasons that are explained during our interview. For a time, she paid the bills as a professional choreographer with her own dance school. Ultimately, she began a social media agency serving dozens of clients that propelled her out of the COVID-19 pandemic. With a few tweaks, that agency evolved into a coaching business that now allows our guest to earn more than she did as a dentist while traveling the world. In fact, during this interview, she was connecting from Paris, France, with Greece, the next sojourn on her current global journey. Before we get to that interview, however, let's hear from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by the Physician Executive MBA program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville's Haslam College of Business. In less than one calendar year, this program will equip you with valuable business acumen and leadership development not found in the traditional medical school curriculum. Are you ready to join the longest-running physician-only MBA program in the country and a network of nearly 1,000 PEMBA graduates? Contact Dr. Kate Ashley's office at 865-974-6526 or go to nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. Our guest, Dr. Angela Mulrooney, completed her doctorate in dental medicine at the University of Saskatchewan and ran her own practice from 2009 until 2015 in Calgary, Alberta. She then shifted gears, opening Unleashed Dance Company, where she was the head choreographer until 2021. She then started a business and marketing consulting company, serving other clinicians, followed by a full-blown marketing agency, which grew to a team of 14. She now runs Unleashing Influence Incorporated, which helps clients pivot to entrepreneurship, leverage their expertise, and do work they love while earning more from any location they choose. Let's jump into today's fascinating interview. Okay, for those entrepreneurs listening and watching today, I have a real treat for you. Our guest was working as a dentist, and somehow her entrepreneurial side kicked in, and she created a very successful referral-based dental clinic, and then later a professional dance company, and then a coaching company for dentists. And then this has morphed into what she's doing now, which we'll get into in today's interview. So I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Angela Mulrooney to the podcast. Hello, Angela. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate you being here. So another, healthcare professional who has veered off in a direction, which I think my listeners would love to hear about. So like we usually do here, why don't you just start by telling us about, your background, how you, went from being a dentist to doing what you're doing today. You don't have to go into too much detail, but just an overview of what you've been up to the last decade or so.
Sure. So I originally was a dentist, and I'd wanted to be a dentist since I was 2. So it was really a dream come true. And every day that I got to go into practice, it felt like I was just, playing power tools and blood. Pretty cool. So I did that for the first 4.5 years, worked as an associate, primarily working with children because I was so ridiculously shy. I couldn't look adults in the eye. So I focused on kids because I could just tell them stories. And then I happened to run into one of my old bosses who was working in a locum for a 78-year-old dentist. And he was like, Anne, I really don't like doing dentistry. You know this. So do you want to take a couple of days off my hands? So I said, sure. That was on a Friday. By Sunday night, he called me. He's like, Anne, can you just take the whole thing? Like, I really don't want to be practicing dentistry. So I was like, okay. So I had no idea what I was getting into and walked into this practice, and it was the most rundown, broken down practice I'd ever seen. The carpet was black because it had never been cleaned. It was actually beige, was the original color. So pretty gross. But every day I walked in there, I just saw potential. And it turned into me going from always saying like I was never going to own a practice because I was still a professional dancer at that point, to me thinking, wow, there's potential in everything here. I think I can turn this place around. So I ended up going and seeing the 78-year-old dentist at the hospital. He unfortunately was dying of bladder cancer, and asked him if he was okay with me putting a bid on the practice. And it was funny because before that, he had always said there was no way he was going to sell it to a woman. He was very old school.
Oh boy.
And he had heard enough good things from the patients who had come to visit him, like they were family, um, that he was like, yeah, no, I would actually love for you to take over the practice. So I did. And 6 months into owning it, I really scrapped really everything that was in there, rebuilt the whole practice physically and aesthetically, and also went from taking insurance to not taking insurance. So I went from an assignment practice to a non-assignment practice, and went and started investing in my skills to be able to serve what I saw was potential in the practice was these people who were terrified of the dentist because the old dude was pretty rough. So I went and got my IV sedation. I did my full mouth rehab, implants, all these things. And that's how I created a referral-based practice, because most people do not want to work with patients who are afraid of the dentist because it takes a lot of time. So I had really a blue ocean market and started just sending out letters and referral pads. And every month on the week that the referral pads went out, we got a whole rush of referral of patients who either needed IV sedation or who were terrified of dentists. So that was awesome. Got the practice to the point that I wanted it to be at, and then I got injured out. So I ended up with focal dystonia, which had been kicking in slowly over time. And then finally, during the middle of a surgery, my hand completely stopped working. I couldn't pick up my drill. So it was the last day I practiced dentistry, which was a really scary day. And so that put me on a completely different path to start doing other things with my life.
All right. So did you say you were a professional dancer in there?
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about that, just so we got to know.
Yeah. So actually, I was originally a gymnast as a kid. And then when I went to university, the biggest social club was the University of Saskatchewan Ballroom Dentistry Club. So I was like, okay, well, that's what everyone else is doing, so I'll go there. And the first year after I was in the club, they started asking me to teach, and I'm like, no, I'm trying to get into dental school. Don't distract me. And then I got into dental school, and I'm like, please distract me. Let me have a position. So I started teaching, and then I turned pro the day that I graduated dental school. And so I had those two parallel careers. So I would go into the studio at 5 or 6 in the morning, go and train until my shift started. And then when my shift was done, I would go back to the studio and teach. So I had two careers going at the same time, pretty much until I got injured.
Okay. Now I remember, so did that interfere then with the dance as well? Or did you end up teaching that later or at the same time? How did that fit in?
So with the dystonia, well, it affected styling, because there's actually this very famous picture of me with like my hands are supposed to be like this, and one of them is like this, the dystonic hand, because it would just do its own thing. So it affected styling and sometimes control of my arm, but we just built choreography around it and got it. We just made it work. So.
Okay, so then what did you do after that? So you kind of got very entrepreneurial after all this happened, I think, from what I know. So go on from there.
So after I got injured, everyone was telling me, okay, you've built this brand, you're known in the market, you're known to patients, you're known to the dentist, just keep going with it. Like, you can run this as like a CEO and not practice clinical dentistry. So I was like, okay, I guess I can do that. So the unfortunate part was I had invested so much in my skills. I had to bring in 4 different associates part-time to try and cover off the skills that my patients were used to receiving. So that was a bit of a headache. And after 2.5 years, I'd been through the global financial crisis when I first bought the practice. And then I was in Calgary, which is an oil-based city, and the 2015 oil crash, like, the economy was dropping super fast. And I just was like, you know what? Every time I go into the practice, my heart hurts, because these people don't care as much about patients as I did. It didn't feel that way. And so I decided, it was time to just pass the torch to someone else and start moving on with my life. So I decided to sell the practice. I fire sold it, and passed it on to someone else. And honestly, the day that the deal went through, like official ownership transferred, it was like this weight was lifted off me and I felt released to go and do new things. So it was interesting how much that weighed on me trying to keep this thing alive that just wasn't a fit anymore.
Okay. Now I know ultimately you began at some point teaching other people how to become entrepreneurs and kind of pursue their dreams, but take us through the way that developed, or, the steps to getting to that.
Yeah. So after I sold the practice, I took a year away from dentistry because everyone knew who I was and what had happened. And everyone that I met in the dental world was like pity. And I didn't deal very well with pity. I was having enough problems just keeping it together. So I stepped away, spent a year just building my professional dance company. And in that time, what happened was the pieces of why things had happened started to kind of make sense. I was like, okay, I've been through some really strange things, from, the owner dying halfway through me buying the practice, to getting sued by my team, to worst case scenario of like being injured out of my career. So I decided to take all the lessons of what I'd done and create my coaching company for dentists. And really what my goal was to help them to build a brand, but also find their passion in dentistry, because a lot of dentists really don't like dentistry and they're doing things on a daily basis that they don't like. So my goal was to like help them to get passionate. So that went on for about 2.5 years. And how I built that company was actually getting on LinkedIn, posting content, starting conversations. And in a year of putting effort into LinkedIn, I went from 200 to 12,000 industry followers.
Wow.
And so then people started to go, how did you do that? And can you do that for me? So I started to take a few different colleagues' accounts, and I said, I don't promise anything. I don't know if what I did was a complete unicorn or if I can replicate this, but I will try. So I started working on their accounts that I was actually able to replicate the results. So that's where Unleashing Influence, the original iteration of it, was a social media agency for professionals. And so that came out of me building my business coaching company for dentists. And that became an official company on January 17th of 2020. March 17th, 2020, Canada got shut down. And so exactly 2 months to the day, I had some big decisions to make, because I had a couple of team members. I had 3 different companies. So I had my dance company, the business coaching company, and the social media agency. And I told the people in the social media agency to buckle in, keep yourself healthy, get lots of sleep, because we are going to take this to the moon. And by 10 months into the pandemic, we had gone from 2.5 full-times to 14 full-time team members. So it just took off. The dental coaching company got shut down because dentistry got shut down. Dance company got shut down because we weren't allowed to be near each other. So I definitely picked the right pony at that point. And then by the end of the year, I was like, I don't want to be in lockdown in a snowbank anymore in Calgary. So I made the decision that I was exiting Canada to go hang out in a tropical place for at least 12 months. I want to avoid snowflakes for 12 months. So I bought a one-way flight to Nicaragua and arrived there on January 21st of 2021.
Wow, that's a lot. Now,
It is
I could ask you
Sorry.
1,000 questions, but I want to go back because, your experience with dentists applies, I think, to physicians as well. And so I'm just curious, like when that thing was working and, you were going to like even expand it, what were the things that dentists could do with their practices that were unique to each of them? In other words, it's like with physicians, we're cookie cutter. We're family medicine. We all do the same thing. We get bored. It gets tedious and so forth. But I can imagine there are things, you can specialize in certain things or you can focus on certain things. So just give me a glimpse of some of the things that you help dentists do before we get into the rest of it.
For sure. Well, what happens is, we're trained in university to be generalists.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to be good at everything. And so if there's things on your schedule that make you go, oh, do I have to do this today? Or if there's a patient that you see that you feel that way about, why are you doing that to yourself?
Oh boy, I've had those feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. Life is way too short. So if you can be comfortable saying, okay, I no longer do root canals. Maybe I don't do surgery anymore. Maybe I don't do kids, and focus in on the skills that you're actually talented at and passionate about. Yes, you're going to have to send some people out, or you're going to have to bring an associate in to cover that stuff. But what's going to happen is you're going to get better. You're going to get more niched into your genius in that skill, and you're going to be so much happier doing it. And patients are going to feel that. So if you are not a good jack of all trades, which, let's be honest, nobody is.
Right.
So if we can start getting away from that jack of all trades, like they have to give us a jack of all trades education in university because they have to expose us to everything, but it doesn't mean we have to do everything forever. So if you can hone it down to the things that you actually like doing and focus around that, you can build a practice. You can make money doing anything. Let's be honest. but you have a professional degree, you have a designation that is recognized by the public. If you say you're a doctor, you say you're a dentist, people have the gist of what you're doing. It's pretty easy to market it and just focus on exactly what you like to do, and then either fill in the gaps with an associate, as I said, or refer those patients out. But you can design a practice around anything that you want. There's no legalities about saying no to root canals, saying no to surgery, saying no to whatever you don't want to be doing.
Yeah, there might be, I can imagine in the US where, you'll say a family physician, you're on some kind of Medicare panel, you can't necessarily, refuse. But if you say, look, okay, I'm just not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this part of my practice. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else. That's fine. I've not really heard anyone really emphasize that aspect, but it sounds very effective. So I appreciate that. Okay, now jump forward again now to your this. Basically, you had started this agency. It was a social media type company. What does that really look like? I'm trying to imagine who were on that team, and what. Maybe just explain a little more detail as to what that business looked like and was comprised of. Sounds interesting.
Sure. So there was 14 full-time creatives. So I had everything from copywriters to graphic designers to people who were doing video editing for me. I had one manager in place, but yeah, pretty much it was almost 14 full-time creatives. And so they were like, there was pods working on different clients. So there was lots of little moving pieces in it. And I'll be honest, there's a reason I sold the agency. It's a lot. It's a lot to manage because there's so many moving pieces and you have to be relying on people to keep up. And I found I had to build a lot of redundancy in, because at that time there was so much turmoil in the employment market as well. So someone would get offered another job and they'd be like, okay, I'm moving over there. So then you're quickly replacing. So we always had like 2 of everything and a backup plan for that, it was really stressful, especially when there was a shift. So I was losing a lot of sleep over my agency, which is why I ended up selling it.
Now, who were the clients? What type of people or companies were they?
So most of my clients were actually coaches, consultants, and speakers.
Okay.
Because what happened when we had the shutdown, all the events were gone. So their way of being able to go and hang out and have coffee with people or speak from the stage and get clients, all those in-person marketing tactics were off the table. And a lot of the speakers as well, even the coaches, sitting in front of a camera and trying to be entertaining when you don't have 1,000 people in the room who are giving you energy. There was people who were losing their career because they couldn't pull it together on camera. So a lot of them were coming to me to be training, like, how do I use my hands? How do I use the space? How do I use the actual camera to be engaging so that I can get back on track? Because the pandemic landing zeroed the field for speakers. These people who were famous for 30 years, who were amazing in a room, were terrible on camera, and they realized it very quickly. And so they had to develop a new skill set. So I acquired a lot of those, coaching them on camera, as well as building out their social media presence so they could go out and reach and hunt new people into their business.
All right. Very good. Now that brings us up to, I think, almost the present here, Unleashing Influence. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that in more detail, and then I'll have some more questions about that.
Sure. So after moving to Nicaragua, I started to really realize I did not want to work 100 hours per week. That had been my norm for the past 2 or 3 years. And so I started to realize, okay, this social media agency with all these team members is just not good for my health. So I sold it to one of the team members. And then I was like, okay, this coaching company for dentists, this is not really where my heart is, because every time I walk into a practice or talk to a practice that's not as passionate about dentistry as I am, and I'm like, I want people to practice on my behalf because I couldn't anymore. It was like someone ripped a scab off my heart. So I decided to sell that one as well and just go all in on what I did best, which was really cracking clients open, helping them to see their potential, see what they could be in the marketplace, and also helping them to really step into their genius and fully own that and be able to burn away everything that didn't belong. So that's what I hunkered down to. And for 3 months after I made that decision, there was money coming in after selling the other 2 companies, but it wasn't super confirming that I'd made the right decision. So I was a little scared. And then about 3 months to the day after selling the last company, I got a deposit from a client, which was paying in full for my services. And it was more than I would have made full-time working as a dentist. So I was like, okay, that's a sign. This is going to work. So the ball is rolling. So I let it keep rolling. So I let that develop out. And because I changed what I was showing on LinkedIn, people started to contact me saying like, how can I work with you? And suddenly my book of business increased. And I was like, oh, geez, if we keep going down this path, I'm going to be back to working 100 hours a week, back to being addicted to being an entrepreneur. And that's not what I want. So I took a step back and looked at what I was doing. And really, I was saying the same thing multiple times a week. I had these really talented clients who were feeling very alone in their journey. Like when you step out of corporate and step into being an entrepreneur, people think you're insane because you've taken a massive risk, especially after you've had, a 30, 40-year career. And now you're like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want instead. So they had a lot of misunderstanding from the community. And they also had a bunch of genius. So I decided to have some hard conversations and say, okay, this one-on-one thing is not working. And I want you to trust me to do this group coaching thing. And let's just see what happens. And it was like magic. So what used to take so many years to get people through, in 90 days, we could collapse 2 years worth of work into 90 days and get them massive outcomes. So that's what Unleashing Influence became, is a coaching company. And that's what I do for a living now.
Awesome. I think the next part is going to sound to my listeners perhaps as an advertisement for you, but really I want to hear like the cases that give us specific examples of some of the success that your clients have had, just because it's fascinating and we learn from what they learned. So just a few cases would be fantastic.
So one of my clients, she was former CIO of NASA. And so after
that's a minor job. Yeah.
It's just a minor. So after 40 years in the tech industry, she came to me and she's like, okay, I don't want this anymore. I want to pivot. And originally she thought she wanted to be a professional speaker. And I'm like, well, let's have a conversation about what professional speaking looks like. Cause I had done that before the pandemic had hit. And so after our conversation, she's like, okay, I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, okay, let's do that. So she went through the accelerator with the other people in the group, and she was able to close 150K the first month of working out of the accelerator. So she was able to pivot fast and get her programs up and running. I've had I'll give you a dental specific one. So I have one that she was making good money, but she was working all one-on-one. So she could only take on 10 practices. And she was also traveling to the practices. And we have taken all the travel off the table and made it all online, because she was like, I want to be able to be geographically free like you, not necessarily traveling the world, but at least have some freedom to move around without being stuck. I have to go to this practice this week. I have to go to this practice this week. So we were able to like redesign her program to 10 times her hourly rate and decrease her hourly, how many hours she was working a week, by 1/10. So then that freed her up to design a new program that allows her to keep condensing things and stay with the group programs and be able to move that into the future. So what I really like doing is helping people to get away from the one-on-one, because one-on-one, if you've done any one-on-one, you go in with your idea and someone comes in with whatever happened that day and they're like knocking you off, off your path. And you're like, okay, shoot, we didn't stick to the curriculum. But with group, especially if you're doing a high caliber group, and I recommend creating boutique groups, not like your downsell of like, oh, I'll do 1 to 1,000. No, these are like 6 people in your group, and they start together and they finish together, and they're going through a very specific curriculum, and there's a very specific outcome that they are going to be achieving. Then you get so much, people are so dedicated to that. And because no one wants to show up being the kid who's like, well, the dog ate my homework. Right. They're all high caliber individuals. The dog didn't eat your homework. You just didn't do it. So it's a very different approach versus one-on-one. And what I found is what I help people to do is like some of the fluff that they were putting into their one-on-one coaching, we get rid of that. It's like, what is the 5% that is creating 95% of outcomes? That's all that goes in your program. So that allows us to time collapse because they're not spending time on fluff. And then the outcomes become huge.
Okay. Well, I hear questions coming in right now. One of the questions is going to be, without going into too many specifics, is, what did the NASA person do in terms of just what was the general field that they went in where they could generate that with, just refocusing and reapplying some of the things that you've taught her?
So she stayed in the tech industry,
Okay.
but she, like, as a woman in tech, she shouldn't have been able to achieve shouldn't have been able to achieve what she did achieve with being the gender that she was, being in the generation that she was. So she goes in and works with Fortune 500 companies and helps a cohort of women to be able to raise their hand and be like, okay, here's the innovation I want to bring into this company. Here's what I want for it, and be able to actually, they're helping to elevate the company, and they're also helping to elevate their own status within the company, because that's
Nice.
what she did her whole career. So we just took what she naturally did. This is what I do with everyone, is like, what do you naturally do? Can we take what's happening in your beautiful brain and turn it into a curriculum that we can teach other people how you naturally did that?
One thing I would add to that, and it sounds like I'm maybe disagreeing with her, but actually, if you're a minority, if your gender is woman or whatever, anything that's different, companies are looking for that. So
They are
definitely
now.
don't
Yeah.
let that hold you back. Like, let's do it. All right. That's awesome. Okay. Other examples. Have you worked with many clinicians as a background, doing something like this, abandoning the
I've
old?
worked with a few dental clinicians as well who, some of them are getting injured out and they're like, I can see the end coming, which is nice if you can see the end coming. And some of them are just like, I'm just done. I just want to move on to other things. And again, take what they naturally do that is so unnatural to everyone else and be able to teach them a process to get to the next level.
Okay, now let me ask you. There was another question I had. Well, I'm going to ask you about LinkedIn for sure.
Sure.
But let me
My favorite
see.
topic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, the groups, and I think you mentioned this in your on your website. But what you sounded like you were describing is what some people call a mastermind. It's like group coaching, but you're all like, holding each other accountable. Is that, because I know, is that a separate thing, the mastermind, or is that just basically part of this process?
So the first thing that they have to go through is the pivot accelerator. So that gives them the foundation. Really, I'm taking whatever they've got, if they already have one-on-one coaching or if they're coming from corporate and building out a new program. I do what's called a crack you open session, and they always say that it's like, you took a look at my soul and then you look at my experience, your expertise, passion, and then I package them and give them their brand in the marketplace. Then the accelerator is building out everything from building out their personal brand, learning how to be good on camera to create awesome content, building out their curriculum, learning how to actually sell themselves, because selling for another company versus selling for themselves, different story. And then also all the tech that they need behind it so that they can run a 7-figure company with a part-time VA supported by a tech platform for it. So that's the first level that they have to get through. And then once they graduate, then they can qualify to become part of the Badass Entrepreneurs Club, which is what we do to continue to become masterful at the program that they've created while also scaling it to the next level.
Very nice. All right, we're going to get in LinkedIn, but why don't you go ahead and tell us your website URL, so we at least have that now before the end of the episode.
Sure, it's unleashinginfluence.com.
Okay, that's easy. Unleashing Influence. Of course, that'll be in the show notes. Okay, now tell me, why do you like LinkedIn so much? It sounds like you use it a lot, and I don't know if you do that for use it to find clients or to just promote yourself. Just tell me your LinkedIn story.
So LinkedIn is a beast. And a lot of professionals, including medical, dental, avoid LinkedIn. So when I was first building my business coaching company for dentists, they're like, you need to be on Facebook, you need to be on Instagram. I'm like, my bet is on LinkedIn, because no one else was using it. So I was able to build a 6-figure company in 6 months, just leveraging LinkedIn. And all I was doing was sending out messages, putting out content that was speaking to what I believed in, and that got me clients. So then when I built the social media agency for professionals, LinkedIn again was our main tool. And I have dabbled with Facebook. Like, I've tried Facebook ads. Facebook has eaten or Meta has now eaten my lunch a few times. Without giving me a single client, like $60,000, $70,000 worth of ads.
Oh,
with no return, yeah, not a fan of Meta. But it's still a good platform. It's just not good for me and for the clients that I'm going after. So you have to really pick your platform based on what are you offering and who are your clients. There's tons of people who do well on Facebook. There's tons who do well on Instagram. For the clients that I work with, they're professionals speaking to professionals. That's why LinkedIn is so powerful. So yeah, that's how I built the social media agency. That is how I built Unleashing Influence as it currently stands. All my clients come from LinkedIn.
Now, when you're using LinkedIn, I've never used sort of an add-on software or tool for LinkedIn. You just using basic LinkedIn, maybe Premier, or how do you use LinkedIn, and how do you reach people? You just one at a time reaching out?
So we use Sales Navigator. So with all my clients, we get really specific about, what are the degrees that we should be going after. Sometimes it's gender specific. Some of my clients only work with women, some of them only work with men. And then it's also figuring out, what age would they likely have graduated, or what year would they have likely have graduated to be a certain age. So we comb through those details. Sometimes it's also specific to a part of the country. Sometimes it's specific to a part of the world, depends on the time zones that they want to work in and whatnot. But we do get very specific about those things because you only get, so LinkedIn has taken away people's ability to spam and behave badly. So now you only get 20 new connections per day on average. Mm-hmm. And so you want to be very careful with how you're spending those 20 connections, especially if you want to get profitable fast, you want to be getting in touch with the right people. So the more drilled down you can get into that as to the things that I talked about, the better off you are. And then not only do you need to be finding the right people, you need to be sending the right message to them. And I always talk about being polarizing, and it's not to be a badass or anything like that. It's just to be like, you either want people to be a yes or a no, mm-hmm. not a maybe. Because if they're a no, you don't have time to be talking to people who are no. The people who are yes, that's what you want to figure out. And you want to slowly get them dialed down by having conversations with them, getting them into an event, and then getting them onto a call to become part of your program. And the faster you can push people out who are not appropriate, the faster you're going to get the result. And a lot of people, I'm going to refer to my nationality here, are very Canadian about this. And they're like, but I started a conversation, so I have to finish it. And it's like, well, you don't actually. You can politely find your way out of it. And lots of people, they don't come back onto LinkedIn for like 6 months. So the fact that you didn't respond to someone who was not appropriate to you, it's not going to be a big deal. No one's going to shoot you over that.
I like it. Good advice. But let me ask you, let's see. I'm just trying to think. What I noticed when I'm looking at your website, and I actually signed up, for one of your courses. I think it was one of the intros, but I think you use that. So explain how that works for those that might be the right process. So, you have something out there, you have a LinkedIn profile, maybe you're reaching out to people. And I gather the thing you want to do is just get them into that first exposure to you at some level. So just kind of map that out for our listeners.
Right. So after we found the right people, we're going to send a message, start a conversation, and then I take over the conversation until I get them to the point where I'm like, okay, this seems like the right fit of person. So if they're like, I really need to talk to you because I've shown them what I do, then I will get on a call with them. But I don't really want to close them on that first call, because I want them to have time with me in the room. So that's what my events are for. So I do 5-day challenges and 5-hour intensives. And what those are is me taking people through what it would be like to be in my classroom, and helping them to move into a transformation. So usually what I focus on is a mindset transformation. I'm going to give you technical things to do as well, but the biggest shift is getting out of your own way. And we talk a lot about burning things away, which is usually what's holding people back, because they're like, oh, but I've always done this, and so I need to keep doing it. And so they carry all this garbage with them, and they keep redoing the things that aren't actually making a difference. So it's like, how do we pare this down to the 5% that's giving you 95% results? And so when people experience that, they're either a yes or a no for actually becoming part of my program, which makes it easy for me. And I'm also a yes or a no for them being part of my program, because I'm seeing, how do they behave in the room? Do they play well with others? Are they willing to be vulnerable? Because I ask some pretty hard questions in it. So I want to make sure that they are actually going to be willing to be truthful, not posture about what is actually happening in their life? And also, are they responsive to inputs, right? If they're like, oh, no, I already knew that. Well, they're not really likely to be coachable. So that's going to make it not very fun when they're in my accelerator. We're intensely trying to get through things. Resistance is not great. So for people who are resistant, I'll recommend that they do the Unleash Your Badass Self for Profitability. It's a 30-day mindset program. And to see how they come out on the other side of that, because it really makes it clear what your programs are, what your resistance is, what has been holding you back. But yeah, it gives people a really, like, for my clients to use it as well, because same reasons. You get to see who's in the room, you get to see how they act, you get to see if you're a good chemistry together or not, and decide whether you want them in your program.
Interesting. Yeah. Reminds me of someone I heard say that when asked the question of whether they're interested in something, if it's not a hell yes, then it should be a no. That's the old adage. Okay. Yeah. Well, we are actually out of time. We kind of went over a little bit, not a big deal, but we're going to have to wrap up. So actually, if you want to tell us anything more about, what you do and convince some of the listeners to get off their something and take action, I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. So my suggestion is, if you have been plateauing for a while, you got to decide if you want to stay plateauing or if you want to get out of your way. And if you come to one of the events, either the 5-day intensive or 5-day challenge or a 5-hour intensive, you're going to see things about yourself that you can't unsee that are going to propel you forward. It will make you break through your plateau. It's really hard to go back to what you were before the event started. So if you are feeling stuck and you're looking for possibilities and want to get some ideas, highly recommend that you attend one of those.
And that would apply to even someone who's maybe unhappy in their clinical situation now, but still wants to see patients somehow, but just needs to break into, maybe have a breakthrough or something that would apply to them as well. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Because I tend to get focused on taking people out of practice and move them into utilization management or this or that, or, starting some kind of company, but there's really no reason why I can't apply these principles to what you're doing now and just make it, like you said, something that you love to do and get rid of all the stuff you hate. Okay. Again, how's the best way to get a hold of you and track you down?
The best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. So my profile is Dr. Angela Mulrooney.
Okay. So that's easy to find, and I'll put that in the show notes. We've got your website, unleashinginfluence.com, which I'll put in the show notes as well. And well, we've learned a lot here in the last 30 minutes. So this has been fantastic, Angela. Really thank you for taking time on your world travels. I mean, we didn't tell the listeners, I don't think, when we started here, that where are you at right now?
I'm currently in Paris, and in 2 days I will be moving to Greece.
Paris, Illinois? No, I don't think so. Paris, France, and going to Greece next. Oh, that is awesome. And working sort of, or I guess you are working, obviously, but I'll have to link you up with somebody I know that actually just works always traveling, but she's a physician that does that. It's a digital nomad, she calls herself. But all right, with that, Angela, don't hang up on me, but we're going to say goodbye for the podcast. So I really appreciate you coming here, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Perfect.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I found Angela's story to be fun and inspirational. She certainly practices what she preaches, working while traveling the globe. If you feel that you might want to break out from what you're doing now, possibly while providing medical care to patients, even as you do so, you might want to check out how Angela can help you. As we discussed, you have more options than you might think. If you keep the good parts, jettison the bad parts, and earn more in the process, it would definitely be worth pursuing. To contact Dr. K. To contact Dr. Mulrooney and learn more about what she's doing, just look her up on LinkedIn to start. Then check out her website at unleashinginfluence.com. She has several programs that will help you to begin your entrepreneurial journey that won't break the bank while you decide if her style and expertise is what you need. You can find those links to her LinkedIn profile and website and a transcript at nonclinicalphysicians.com/create your ideal life. And those are hyphenated. By the way, did you know that you can sponsor the Physician Non-Clinical Careers podcast? As a sponsor, you'll reach thousands of physicians to sell your products and services or to build your following. Your message will be heard on the podcast and seen on our website, in our newsletter, and in social media posts. To learn more, go to nonclinicalphysicians.com/sponsorships. Remember, too, that this podcast is made possible by the support of the University of Tennessee Physician Executive MBA program. You can learn more about that at nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. Sometimes I use affiliate links here in the show, and that means I receive a payment from the seller if you purchase the affiliate item using my link. I don't have any affiliate products that I'm promoting today. I remind you that the opinions expressed here are mine and my guests, and while the information provided on the podcast is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, there's no guarantee that using the methods discussed will lead to success in your career, life, or business. Always consult an attorney, accountant, or career strategist, or maybe all three, before making any major decision a decision about your career, rather. All right, that's all for today. I hope to see you here next Tuesday on the next episode of Physician Non-Clinical Careers. Bye-bye.